And welcome. We are all present and accounted for. I'm sure John will be down shortly. All present, so no apologies. And has anyone got any urgent additional business for this morning? Any declarations of interest? My confirmation, please, of the minutes of the 23rd of August. And Sarah James seconded Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? No. Okay, now we'll head into our public forum. I'd like to welcome the members of the Te Aroha Business Association to speak this morning, and we've got Alison there, Chair, President, whatever you are, Chairperson, to speak to us today. So welcome everybody. The podium's up there, the light's on, so you have the floor.
There's no one home.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
And it's just a reminder that councillors may ask, I'll push it back on again, it's already on.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Just a reminder that councillors may ask for clarification of some of your conversation at the end. It's not an answer, so you can answer questions for anything. Yeah.
Please be gentle.
Ask questions.
I don't know everything.
Perfect.
I take a moment to make it up.
No, I'm sure we'll be fine, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're here on behalf of the Te Aroha Business Association in support of the Spa Development Project. We understand that it's a considerable investment involved in the project, and we acknowledge appreciation of the efforts that have been made thus far. We're very grateful. It is a big goal. However, we already have our mountain, our water, our domain, and the opportunity to utilise and expand the spas that are already busy would seem to be a natural progression in those areas. As a community, through volunteers, we've established in our town a BMX track with a club that continues to grow, a dirt kart track running race days that they've had to limit entrance as drivers come from very far and wide to participate. The mountain bike club that are enthusiastic to develop and keep growing the tracks that are there. Of course, in the past, the Silver Fern Event Centre was another project that's certainly well utilised today. Further history was a pool project, and some of us old people will remember that, where the whole town got involved to raise funds to get it established. Our association has recently completed an under-eve lighting project. We funded the installation through grants and committed to the running costs of obviously the power and maintenance. This was an investment that we felt made our streets safer and brighter for the appearance of our town. There's so much opportunity to add into our domestic tourism with the Haraki Rail Trail, the walking tracks, linking the Matamata-Piako district as a whole. We'd like to work with you to achieve progress and support a subcommittee to take the project forward in a staged approach. Just want to say thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to come and just say that we really are very favourably looking towards the project in our town.
Does anybody want to ask anything? I think it's nobody's put their right on. So thank you, Alison. I think it was actually really good that you painted a picture of the community and what's happened over the years, because I think there are new councillors in the room that perhaps wouldn't be aware of perhaps some of those things that the community's been very involved with that have been very successful over the years.
Yeah.
And
it'll be a considerable volunteer, and there's people who actually get together, make a plan, follow it through. And it's, it's quite refreshing, to be honest. So people are actually prepared to put their money where their mouth is, and that's why we're here, to say that we'd like to be involved, and we're happy to do some draft. We just need to have a plan. So, if it comes today that maybe a subcommittee is formed for a staged approach, obviously it's not going to happen overnight, we know that, but we just appreciate being able to be involved and actually have some input.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Alrighty. We'll now move on to item 7.1, which is the domain playground update, and we have Rose and Tamara leading the staff are leading it with Rose from the community driving the project.
Do you girls want me to move? No, you're sure. Sorry, I spilled myself out the road. Apologise. Sorry.
Thank you. Good morning. Come on, you're leading on. Hand over to Rose.
I am heading over to Rose, so I can bring. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you all for your time. Since we were last here at a workshop, that was it back in June or July? June or July. We were going to bring it back in July to the formal council meeting for approval. So that's our concept for our base concept for the playground, to consult with the community. What we did after that workshop, we didn't feel that we had the concept at a point that we were happy to bring to the community for consultation. So we did some more work on it, and we now feel we have the concept in a place, I suppose, where we are happy to bring it to the community for consultation. So, I just wanted to emphasise this is the base concept. Where we plan to, if council approves it, where we plan to go to from now is go into a developed design, which are really the specifics. And that developed design stage is really the crunchy end. It's where we go into detail. We also take into account all of the feedback we've received to date. It's from everyone, council personnel, our iwi, who we're continuing to work with, and the community. So this is where we've got it to. Well, look, I can't see. Do you want that? Yeah, should I go back through it again, or just bring it to the? Okay, so we adjusted. So we presented this concept. How do I go back? Okay. Yeah. Right. So we adjusted this. We presented this at the last workshop, and we have updated it since. And this flowchart here kind of shows where we've got to date. So we're at kind of the concept that we will then go to preliminary / developed design. That developed design we hope to bring back to council for approval in this side of Christmas. So we've got a really intense 2 months ahead. Okay, so this you will have largely seen before. So that's the existing playground that we have. And so Bob and Miskell, who we're using, the landscape architects we're using, have kind of worked through. This is a bit of a site analysis in terms of looking at where it's at in the context of Matamata. And we went into the opportunities and the constraints. The constraints, obviously, a key one that's continue to come up are the trees. We've had to really consider, in particular, leaf fall. There's also acorn fall as well. We have the 2 protected trees there, shown as B and 1. And they will remain in place because we really want to obviously get protected, but really we want to make them a really pleasant feature of the playground, and of course they offer the shade as well. And we, in terms of some preliminary engagement that we went through, we did some consultation through the schools, and we had the children provide us with their perspective in terms of what their particular play preferences were among kind of climbing, spinning, swinging, jumping, flying, and music. So we're able to start to build up some idea of, in terms of patterns of preferences, because we have it's a valuable perspective, I suppose, in terms of what we end up, the particular piece of equipment we end up gravitating towards. And we also did some preliminary engagement with the iwi in May, and so we've received the feedback. So they wanted to go away and do some form a bit of a subcommittee so that they could then work, kind of discuss amongst themselves the themes and the stories they wanted to bring into the playground design. We actually had another meeting with the iwi online yesterday, which was actually really, really positive. and we talked about more specifics and really started to develop those ideas. So so that was really, really good, and we're going to continue to do so over these coming couple of months, just to really work on how we can integrate those stories and themes. So so that's really coming along well now. And we looked at other playground examples, and in terms of the scale of ours compared to other playgrounds, and just some of the things that have been used for other playgrounds, what works and what they've done. Martin is probably the most similar in scale to what we're working with, so that's been a useful reference point. And this is where we've landed. This is the concept plan that we propose to take to the community for consultation, and that is with an open mind. So this will feed in to this develop design stage that we're embarking on now. So just to describe probably the key change there, we had a water play feature, and we discussed this at the workshop, and that was in that top kind of left corner where the blue area. We had some reservations in terms of the initial feedback we had in terms of the practicality of a water feature. That it's quite an expensive item when you take into account the infrastructure, and we were also mindful of the ongoing maintenance burden for council, which would be a lot more if there was an actual moving water feature. So we had to take that into account. So we kind of modified it to make it just for the purposes of consultation, because we thought that would become a bit of a negative. We thought it would probably attract more negative feedback than positive feedback, but we're still open to reintegrating it somehow. But we've made it more of a dry water themed feature. So and we saw a really good example in Caroline Bay and Timaru. They're planning to do like a water themed area. So you get the theming through there, but you don't have the burden of the infrastructure and the maintenance. So we're kind of thinking along those lines at the moment. When in our meeting with the iwi yesterday, though, there was more of a pushback towards having some kind of moving water, because that's quite an important thing for them. So we're going to continue working on how we could potentially integrate that in a cost-effective way that doesn't, that meets all of those objectives that we're seeking to achieve. So we have the three elements there. We've got formal play, which is primarily where you see the blue areas, and we have nature play, which is that's through the landscaping and within the bounds of the two trees. And then there's informal play, which is kind of integrated out. So where you've got kind of, rather than equipment as such, you've got your more your areas and kind of smaller and more informal play features. So we've tried to achieve a balance there. We've also consulted with the netball club, and especially in the context of that area where you see the swings in the bottom left corner. That would replace the current court 7 at the netball courts, and so we've spoken with them and their support from the netball club to to lose that court, but that would be on the basis that, because they're really supportive of the basketball court, they thought that was an excellent idea, so we'd make that of a size that would lend itself to, because the key consideration for netball was having a warm-up area. So they're happy to lose a court, but they would want a warm-up area. So we would integrate in holes for netball posts, and we would work with the netball centre to work out the positioning of that, and then that will provide that would serve their needs during the netball season. And for the rest of the time, it's a great basketball court, and that's been a big thing that's come through in that initial feedback we've had from the public. And to the left in the middle, you've got your whānau area, and you've got your barbecue and your picnic seats and things like that. So that would be a bit of a focal point, and then it would, yeah, kind of branch out, I suppose. So yeah, we've that's where we've got to from now. That's with the intent of being really open-minded to the feedback we receive through this next critical phase of consultation. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Rose, with consultation, are you going to the parents? Are you going to your market with this, or are you just going to push it out to the community?
Yes, well, we can go back into schools. We can go to the library. We'll also have our website. Will be so we're going to try and cast this. Yeah.
I just wanted in the consultation, you're going to make it clear that that this might be a stages that go through, because obviously there's some fundraising that needs to be done outside what the council's giving the project. So I just want to make sure that, you know, if it ends up not all going to that stage at the start, that it's clear that the community knows that there's more to come once funds are raised.
Yeah, we are wanting to get the bulk of our fundraising at the front end of it, so that we're in a position to fund it all in one go. So I suppose it would be that's what our objective is. We've got about $1 million to fundraise. We've looked at the numbers, so we've got a community. We've got between the community and businesses. We've made a plan for all of that, and then grants as well. So we've already got grant funding applications in as well. So yeah, so we don't want to stage it. So that's not so. But I understand what you're saying. So that's
Still leave us out to dry.
no. It's really important to us. We're not going to ask council for any more money. So it would be, I would say, more of a deferral of starting rather than having to stage it, because the surfacing is all of that's we've got the wet core areas. It actually makes it very difficult to stage things like that. But I understand what you're saying. So we'd have to have a bit of a plan B, but we don't want to be in that position, and we do not intend to ask council for anything more than what has been committed. That's not on our radar at all. So
we will ensure though that it's very, very clear in your comms plan. We've got Andrea down the back of the room that's leading our comms for this, and that'll be very, very clear that it will be contingent on that fundraising happening.
So yeah, deferring is a good word to use, because there's the risk here. So you've assured, I think there's that assurance that the community realises there's 1.5, so that's good. I guess it's the timing of it all, and you hope to have it all and funds raised in time for when the tender process is completed, because I guess it's the tendering is where you need to have it for the procurement.
Yeah, at the moment there's a lot of work things to we're engaging with the playground providers. There's 4 key playground providers on a no expectations basis, and this is a service they offer to they generally offer anyway. For us to really understand what equipment there is, and the pricing and the costings and that, and so we're working with them to try and kind of nut all of that out at the front end.
And just one other question, just regarding tennis.
Yeah,
because those courts are locked. So the tennis club were okay with.
Yeah, I spoke to Shannon and he was.
Yeah, I guess that the challenge for us is from a council perspective is those courts are locked, the 6 courts, and so with Court 7 going into the playground, there will be no public tennis court necessarily available. So that may cause a little bit of angst, because people do use that tennis court from time to time. You can see casual play there, so may have to face that down the track. Working with the
tennis club was supportive, so I understand what you're saying as well.
Yeah, it's public, because this is the thing. It's I guess it's not just tennis club. It's actually people that just want to have a casual game of tennis when they come to the community. So yeah, just to flag that. Russell.
Just seeking clarification, the council's accounts for 1.5, and it's got the end construction of the playground and construction of the playground. So what are you assuming we're expecting the council to cough up the construction, and what does that cost?
No, that's all inclusive in the
1.5.
Yeah, the total project is sitting at about 2.5. 2.5, yeah.
Yeah. And that's including a contingency as well. Number.
Dave?
Yeah, you just mentioned about the water play features before. I notice there's a lot of the playgrounds that you go to and they get to drought things and they can't afford to. Well, it's not enough. Doesn't look good publicly to be running water and things, and a lot of them sit there dry. I guess I just, when you mentioned that off the top of my head, I kind of thought that you've got a toilet that's up in that top left corner, or there may be a drinking fountain, potentially overrun from washing your hands, or drinking fountains could be utilised to run through that, so that, you know, if you get a drought, you can have some water still going through this if you have it, and you're maybe, you know, a little bit more immune from criticism about running water and drought time. So I don't know, it's just a thought I had when you mentioned it.
I guess there's a health factor there, though, isn't there, that you wouldn't be able to.
As soon as it sits outside and, you know, overnight, it's kind of relevant anyway, but I don't know, just.
Yeah.
There's also some stormwater management we need to integrate into this design as well. So there's all of that. It's all feeding into this design. We also talked yesterday with the iwi about, you know, if we have a water feature, it also needs to, you know, it needs to look good if it's dry, if there isn't water, you know, circulating. So that was actually part of that discussion. Yeah, but yeah, optics, yeah, if during a drought, I can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point around the weather, because, yeah, taps do get turned off. Yeah. Any further questions, Sue?
Yeah, it's probably not so much for Rose. I've already had this conversation with Tamara and then on to Todd. I guess from me, it sounds awful, but simplicity for me is a big thing, because when I looked at the inspection, what this is going to cost per year for maintenance, I know Todd said that basically the number he's put on it is an estimate, but the simpler we can keep it. I mean, I question the barbecue, because, you know, cleaning a barbecue every second day is never as good as cleaning a barbecue absolutely every day. So sort of just wondered whether there's an opportunity to bring your own barbecue than us having a barbecue, those sorts of things. Anyway, that was just a consideration, because that's 7.5 is a per annum is an awful lot of cleaning and maintenance, and yeah, but it's just my choice.
Yeah, I guess it is around highlighting costs of maintaining. Yep, Russell.
Just a quick one on the toilet. On the don't know the toilet. I don't know the condition. Obviously, once you get a playground like this, is the toilet going to be fit for purpose? Because you're going to have a lot of people there during the day, and how long will it take till it needs to be replaced?
Yeah, so we've got the toilet in the top left corner there, so that would be a new toilet, and that's out of scope of this playground, but it would be so. Yes, and the top, we're number 3.
Number 3, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in a much better place than Russell. I could, yeah, the staff could probably answer that question, because it's not a small.
It's not a small one. There is a renewal plan, and this one is not in the schedule at the moment, so that's still to be worked out. But yeah, it's just for another phase stage.
I think it's about 3 cubicles in the lagoons. Is it 2 or 3? 2 and something in there. But it's attached. It's fully accessible, and it's attached to the back of the football club rooms. So it's just, if you carry on past where the basketball area is and carry on right, that's in to the football rooms. So there is at least facilities there.
So will it be fit for purpose once this is established or not?
Hopefully we have a toilet sooner rather than later.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I can just add to the toilet. As part of the long-term plan, we are proposing in year 1 a new toilet block in that left-hand corner as a priority. The current toilet block is sort of your 1970s style design. It would have to make way for part of the playground concept as it is currently. It is one of those that's not the most practical in terms of modern needs. So separate to this project, as part of the LTP CapEx for public toilets, we are looking to fund one, which would be sort of a potentially, obviously depends on budget, either a 2 or 3 cubicle unisex, fully accessible toilet in that left-hand corner.
Any further questions?
So we have a recommendation that the council approve the main playground upgrade concept design for wider community feedback prior to the final design phase of the project.
Yeah, I'm really happy to move the recommendation. I think this is a fantastic design. Yeah, it's a really fantastic design.
Okay, so moved Caleb and seconded Tom. Tom, James, where did I get Tom from? Welcome.
Simple,
Yeah.
brother.
I wasn't even thinking of your brother. That's weird. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? Very up to that, Lucas. Really?
Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to coming back before Christmas.
Keep up the really good.
That was good.
That's all right, Paula. That's a weird thing to do. It's okay.
Alrighty, thanks, Alison. Alrighty, we'll now move on to item 7.3. We had a change in schedule with Citizens Advice. We have the Tiara Citizens Advice Bureau joining us this morning, and I see Shirley and Des Roston. First name, John? Des, sorry. Yeah, so I'm not good with names today. I can't even get my councillors' names right. So, yes, come on up, Shirley and Des. We want to, yeah. Good morning.
It's probably by Tom. Peter. Thank you. Because it's right everyone.
Yeah. Up there, we've got.
Say something. This guy's like we all get those names.
Do you need a coffee, Adrian?
Yeah. Brains going. All righty, yeah. Thank you. All righty, with that, I've got your names right. Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship, Mr. McLeod and councillors. My name's Shirley Gillard. I'm the manager of the Citizens Advice Bureau in Tiara, and this is Des Austin. He is currently our IT and stats officer and an interviewer. Apologies from our new chair, Craig Lachlan, who unfortunately has come down with a bad case of shingles.
Oh,
That is here.
here you go.
Ouch.
No, well, no, it's
We're here this morning as part of our, I call it our accountability to council, as we have a memo of understanding and we receive funding from council on an annual basis. So I think the annual report has been circulated. I won't read it, I'll just highlight a couple of things that I'd like you to be aware of. I didn't make very much of the fact that we advocate with work and income. We don't have a work and income office in town, and a lot of the work and income clients aren't able to get to Morrinsville to be their place managers. Transport's not good, and a lot of them don't have vehicles that are legal, so they come to us. And we have finally, after many years, we now have a waiver that we ask these people to sign, and it means that we can then advocate on their behalf with work and income. This is a major breakthrough. It really is for Tiara. Every bureau throughout New Zealand undertakes an annual declaration of compliance. It's a must-do. It makes sure that every bureau throughout New Zealand is on the same page as far as membership and procedures go. We passed this year with flying colours, and kudos for advocating with working income for their clients. Also, our National Vice President, Linda Hodge, who is a member also of Matamata-Piako, said after reading our compliance that Citizens Advice Bureau Tiara is an outstanding bureau that punches very much above its weight. So I rest my case now. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just a general volunteers.
At the moment, we have 14 and 12 of those are active at the moment. It's very hard.
Do Wins give you funding for the job that you're doing, Julie? Like that, all of it? I'm guessing. I kind of thought that would be the case. It seems a bit odd if you're fulfilling a service for them that there's no funding, because obviously there was a deficit this year, and yeah, which is not sustainable, was it? So it's just about trying to.
But neither does. We had a case yesterday that was referred to us from the Justice Department. We have cases referred from what was the Labour Department.
Yep.
They say go to the CAB. They don't really want to handle these smaller things, so go to your local CAB.
I was impressed when I saw the numbers of people that need to deal with it. It's a huge number.
Caleb.
Would it be then pertinent to claim the expenses of the services you're doing for these government departments? Because it seems they're milking the cow and not returning anything to supplement it. My question is a practical one. The numbers in the report, are they in thousands or are they to the dollar exactly? So,
Financial to the dollar.
to the okay.
And we will have a deficit next year too. Our plan tells us that.
So councillors will be aware that our local Citizens Advice Bureau apply in the long-term plan for continued funding annually. And, these are volunteers, I guess, that are putting a lot of effort into our community. It's that much harder for Te Aroha because there isn't an MSD. It's like our budget services, there's no banks. The shoulder falls on the shoulders of volunteers like Te Aroha CAB and the value that they provide to our community. So thank you. And I enjoy going to their meetings, their AGMs. I've been in the district, and the positive people, they're there leaning in, giving to our community, and I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of lonely people. And being the agent for the food bank, that's brilliant, because CAB has arrangements with people to get them bedding or clothing or whatever they need.
It's local knowledge.
It's local knowledge, and it's networking and putting these organisations in a place where we can access them. And the funding thing is ongoing, and we've just been told by our national organisation that the lottery's funding is shrinking, and perhaps each bureau should start applying to regional lotteries, which puts more work on us as volunteers for those applications. So we do appreciate what we have in place.
I guess too, to add in the fact that it gives you certainty because it's a 3-year rollover. You know that funding is available, whereas you can apply to other grants, one-offs.
Yep.
So, because there are councils obviously challenged with how they fund citizens' advice. Anyway,
the paperwork that those grants organisations require now, and the level of tier 4 and reporting and things to prove that you've done what you said you were going to do with the money is insane.
Yes.
Our treasurer would totally agree with that.
Yeah, that complexity. All righty. Well, with that, would someone like to move that the information be received, please? Thank you, Russell. Seconded Sue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. I got your names right. Thank you. Lovely to see you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've now got, good morning, JD. We've got our Risk and Assurance Chair online to give our Risk and Assurance report. Good morning, JD.
Kia ora koutou. I hope you can hear me. Happy Wednesday to you all. I'm just reporting that the MPDC Risk and Assurance Committee met on Tuesday, the 12th of September. We had a really full agenda and I'm proud of the active participation by committee members. We also had Audit New Zealand and the Office of the Auditor General in attendance. I'll take my chairperson summary as read, which outlines the reports that were considered by the committee, the trends of the committee, or the comments made and the questions asked by the committee members, and also the resolution for each of those reports. Our next Risk and Assurance Committee meeting is on Tuesday, the 24th of October, when we'll consider regular items alongside the annual report for 30 June 2023 for Council's adoptions. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Kia ora.
Thank you, JD. Anyone got any questions? I just reiterate that it was a very robust meeting. There was, really pleased with the engagement of the committee. Some very good questions, and thank you, JD, for leading our committee. Really do appreciate your effort here, because you bring attention to a few of those things. Like, to highlight, for example, one of them I think was the misstatements. From year to year, when there's corrections to be made in our audit report, when you change council, how do we capture those things? There's a risk of some of those things that might need rectifying get dropped off the radar. And I thought that was a really pertinent one to keep those current, because there are small things that can continue on. So I thought that was just tweaking some of our processes a little bit to be more assured of what we do.
The tweaking of the procurement process, for example, so we can sort of enable splitting of orders and things like that to get the best value would be going to be a great idea.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you, JD. Would someone like to move the information be received? Thank you, Gary. And seconded, Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you so much, JD. Really appreciate it. Lovely to see you. We'll see you in a short while.
Have a great day. Ka kite, bye.
Bye. Alrighty. Working on, we now have item 7.5, which is the adoption of the grants policies, and that's being led by Sandra.
Good morning, everybody. So as I know you're all aware, Council's recently undertaken a review of our grants policies through workshops. We do this regularly every long-term plan. So every long-term plan, one of our very first building blocks are making sure that we've got our grants policies in place. What I'm planning on doing is just talking through a few of the key changes that we've made following some workshops and from some staff input and some applicants input. And just a reminder that this is to set your policy direction. This is not to set your budget. Your budget will come alongside your long-term plan budgets. So our first policy we've got there is our mayoral fund policy. This is the first time that we are proposing to have a policy for this. We are recommending that we adopt this today. The fund is for your smaller ad hoc community projects and initiatives, and discretion is given to the mayor. So this is, in my words, much more formalising the process that already happens, and formalising some more formal reporting to council through this policy. So that's our new policy. The next two policies are current policies that we're looking at making a few amendments to. So your multi and single year grant policies, these cover, so your multi-year grants are your larger grants that are applied for through your long-term plan. So what these people do is they will make a submission to your long-term plan when you open in March and April next year, and you will consider those through your hearing, which is how it works each time. And your single year grants are those applications that we get funding rounds for 2 times a year. And these are to do with much more your community-based projects as opposed to your community-based organisations as a whole. So the following are the key changes that we are suggesting to your policy. So amendments to reflect much more focus around council's vision and community outcomes, and making it not a requirement to meet a specific number of these criteria, but having it prioritised that meet a number of criteria, so not having it too specific. Council through workshops have expressed a preference to incorporate your current district event grant into this grant. So this means that groups wanting to apply for funding for an event would now do this through this policy rather than your district events grant. This change would mean that for organisations that have applied previously, the change would mean funding rounds. But what we would do is if council agree to this amendment now, we would write to all of those previous participants sooner rather than later so that they're aware and it wouldn't come into force until the next financial year. So they've got plenty of time to plan for those funding rounds. The other major change for this policy is that we're proposing it become a grants committee. So your grants committee would consist of one councillor per ward from all 4 of the wards, instead of having it individual throughout the 3 wards of Matamata, Morrinsville and Te Aroha. And what we would like to have as a recommendation today is that we delegate to this grants committee, but we can establish the members, the 4 members of that grant committee closer to the time. And our last policy is the natural, cultural and built heritage policy. So this is made up of your natural, cultural and built heritage, but also your assistance to community groups for resource consent funding. We have suggested that we update this policy to reflect feedback from the staff that administer the policy. We've added in a preference for formal protection for the features, and the recommendation for our district planner is that the trees must have formal protection. So they must be listed trees within our district plan. And the reason for this is that council's investment in these things are much more likely to be protected well into the future. We've also made minor changes to the layout, so it's a little bit clearer for the decision makers, but also a little bit clearer from the applicants that we've made a few tweaks there. And happy to take any questions on any of those 3 policies.
So I guess my
sorry.
I guess my only comment is it simplifies things. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's great.
It does, and I'm not gonna. It's just that point for that I just hope that we don't get disengagement from some of our community groups when it goes into a pot. That's all. And I know that that'll take some communication and some. So it's a change, and so that's my only point really.
So I guess the baton for us then is to take up on that is to actually, if you're not on the committee and you know a group that's applying, because you're going to be able to have all eyes on it, is to make sure that councillors engage with people too. It doesn't just fall on one councillor representative from the ward. It is for all of us to engage with those community organisations, and that is the challenge that I give to us all ourselves, so that we are engaged with our community, so that people do feel connected to us and that it doesn't get lost.
We would also make sure all of those applications are sent out to all of the councillors so that you have a time to either communicate through staff or through your board representative if you've got some concerns or you're really excited by certain projects.
Yes.
I acknowledge it's easier for the likes of Gary to do, rather than going to 3 meetings, it's 1. But yeah,
solves a lot of challenges.
That's my only point.
Bruce.
I see it as an opportunity to re-engage with the community to, because I see in Morrinsville the same ones come in all the time because they know it's there and the others don't. And so here's an opportunity for us to really re-engage with a more equitable funding.
Done. Oh, sorry, Peter.
Yeah, my concerns are the same as James. I see it as an opportunity to disengage from the community, and I don't support, the one committee council-wide. I see nothing wrong with the current system of having the wards meet and decide the grants ward-wise, but so I'll support the rest, but not number 4, unfortunately.
I was just talking about this a little bit with Bruce last night in a meeting. I think, and this is something that we probably have some discussion on later, but with the grants committee need to remain the same 3 people. I mean, why couldn't we, anybody that's interested in going to the meeting could be drawn out of a hat from each area to keep those things being rotated over, because I wouldn't want to have the same people being going to the committees and then potentially they have a bit of a skew one way or the other for the types of groups that get that. So I think it would be good to share it around and everybody can have a turn being on that committee. Yeah.
That's a good point. That could work.
Yeah, not a problem. So we're planning on bringing back your formal reporting to you either 6 monthly or yearly, depending on the volume of applications to, say, the mayoral fund. That would be your opportunity. We could put in a recommendation that a new grants committee, and it could be the same members or some of the same members, but so we could do that either 6 monthly or annually quite easily.
I guess, Gary, you're and this is the reality of the change that we're making, is to make sure we include our fourth ward. Absolutely, recognising that. Russell.
I had an informal meeting on Monday night with the business association to discuss what they were here today about. This was I brought this up and get some guidance from them, and the guidance they've given me is to vote against number 4 and stick to what we have now, and which what I was going to do anyhow. I just wanted guidance from them.
And I understand that will be around the representation and the disproportionate of applications, and I think it'll be very important for councillors who are sitting on that committee to consider, and that will be that just goes with the territory. It's actually consider all 4 wards.
Yeah, because to reiterate, we're not out of the picture. We're all still can have our tuppence worth, but it's only 3 people that are turning up to the meeting, really. To me, 4 people. Sorry.
Yeah. I think the difficulty with asking people their thoughts around it, and I'm not saying that you don't, but the difficulty with that is that they're not familiar with some of the shortfalls that the current system has around, people applying over and over again and not, so many new people coming in. So I guess that's a little bit hard. And then also, people just don't want to change full stop. So, I guess that's the other side of it that sort of balances out the equation of the kind of feedback that you're likely to get on people that don't know a great deal about how the system works, potentially.
And there's always the opportunity to do this for a few years and then and reassess it. It's not set in stone, but we have the ability to reassess it.
One of the biggest drawbacks on the existing one is where we have a district wide one, and this is an ability to have that more considered on a district wide, rather than it being what's left.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just going to just follow on from that. And I understand, James, Peter, Russell, what you're saying, but in our last lot of funding, we had, as Te Aroha, had nothing left, and it would have been amazing to give to some of those, community-wide grants. So I think this will be a real benefit, having this committee, and looking at it in a more of a district scope. Then I don't feel that anyone will miss out.
Yeah, I struggle with number 4 too, to be fair, only because it's easier for the communities to meet in their own town, to after work or whatever, to come in and talk, and we know them and they know us and they're comfortable. I'd be okay with having a committee of 4 for district-wide applications, 100%. But I think the connection for the community and the councillors is important. Maybe a district-wide committee for the district-wide event one, and have a separate fund for them, maybe.
In fairness, all the applications that we get, only 2 turn up, and not all councillors turn up. So, it's not that everybody's clambering to come in and physically see us. They are happy to not appear. And, there's a minority that want to come and talk to us.
Will that minority decrease though if we make them travel to Morrinsville?
They don't have to turn up, Kevin. We're quite clear on that. They don't have to turn up. We will consider their application as well as on their merits, not on whether they're there or not, to be quite honest. So I don't see that as a disadvantage.
If you do, but most of the Morrinsville ones seem to turn up. I missed the meeting the other night because it crashed at the stadium. I think that's the only meeting I've missed. in
But I'm saying that
9 years.
Stone.
But so mostly we've had a good turnout of what, you know, I can say the Morrisons, but, and mostly the people have been there that have spoken to their application. Yeah, and that will drop away. It will naturally drop away. If you've got to drive to, whether it's Tiara's the middle point or wherever, it will naturally drop away.
Yeah, but surely, you know, if they are eager to be seen in person and they can't come to Te Aroha, Morris or Matamata, surely we can go and see them. Like
Zoom, we can.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that we're all locked into these. We only started these meetings the last term.
Yeah.
They never used to happen, and we wanted to connect with the people, and it's how we manage with this change to continue connecting with our community organisations. And like I said, that's the baton that we all hold as individual councillors, meeting with them on a one-off occasion, turn up and see what they're doing at their organisations. You know, there are multiple opportunities to connect with their community, not just when they're coming to make a funding application. So I think there's a bigger picture here I ask you to consider.
I think we do that, Adrian, anyway.
Some of us do, more than others, but it's just, I think we're focused on a meeting that, as Sue said, not everybody is able to make it, and we need to just, we can, I absolutely hear about point 4. I totally get that. And my personal view is that I'm keen to see us try something different, and we can reassess it and see how it's going. Russell.
Fortunately, our council is not crusty old 60-plus-year-old, and majority of us still work. So we cannot get to those people you're saying.
70-year-old. Some of us aren't.
I'll move the recommendation. Yes.
On 3 to 5.
On 3 to 5.
And Dane's going to second it. Yep. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against?
No.
Aye.
And that's for point 4, I presume, only.
Yep.
And named?
Named, please.
Yep. So Councillor Smith, Jada and Tappan. Thank you. And anyone, that's motion carried.
And if it doesn't work, we just
look at it back. Absolutely. Redo it. So do I continue on with item 7.6, the exemption of the rail trail?
Thank you. So this, I think, is quite a straightforward report. The purpose is to seek a council determination on whether the Rail Trail Charitable Trust should be exempt from the CCO reporting requirements under the Local Government Act. So for those of you who are somewhat new to council, this was established jointly between Matamata-Piako, Hauraki and Thames Coromandel District Councils, formed into a charitable trust. All 3 of the councils are required to grant them an exemption from their CCO reporting requirements. The first lot of exemptions were given in 2014. They last for a 3-year period. So we are here for your 4th round of exemptions. The reasoning is that largely the costs outweigh the reporting, I guess the benefits that you get out of the reporting. So I've spoken to my counterparts at Hauraki and Thames Coromandel. They're also going through this process at a similar time. So they don't have their recommendations as of yet, but they have reports going to their various councils very shortly, because it has to be done by the end of October for us. Everybody has slightly different dates depending on when their council meeting is. And we are required to send this exemption to the Office of the Auditor General to check, to make sure that everything's in line before it runs out at the end of October. Happy to take any questions, hopefully not too many financial.
So moved.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so move Kevin, second Sarah Jane. All those in favour? Against?
Let's see if the other 2 councils agree. Let's see if the other 2 councils agree.
It's a logistical thing that needs to occur. Yeah. Okay. And again, we've got Sandra covering it. You got again 7.7. We've got the appointment of the electoral officer.
And I'll second it.
That was
that's a straightforward. I've had Warwick lead before. All those hang on, do we get the movers? Move Sue. Who was the seconder?
I was moved.
Russell, seconded Russell.
Yeah.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. That's very straightforward.
Easier than that before.
And now we have the Chief Executive's report, 8.1.
So, sorry, I'll just get there.
Yep.
So just trying a different format or different information. There are various ways in which hopefully I keep them informed on things that are happening. And the idea of bringing forward a formal report on a monthly basis is simply to give you the opportunity to raise things in a public meeting that you may be interested in clarifying or have made obvious, if you like, or give profile to. But as I say, this isn't necessarily a complete outline of things that are currently happening, but hopefully I use other opportunities through Q&A and through heads up and that give you a chance to be to have questions raised or be informed on issues.
It's got mostly lines through it.
Can we fix the spelling mistake under localism? I don't really want to repeat it.
She read it.
Oh,
Aspirations as to role.
Oh,
trying to work out.
I was happy.
What
I was happy.
page?
I was happy with that.
I
was happy with it.
Of course you would be.
23, page 23.
It's just a draft, right? Because it looks pretty hard to read.
Page
Has
23.
anybody else got one that's not a draft?
Everybody's in draft.
You've had trouble with that before.
No. It's got all the, it's a real draft, is it?
Oh.
That's what mine looks like.
Mine's not.
Does yours look like that?
I'm looking at the separate attachment.
Separate.
Yeah. Page 23 of the separate attachment.
There's no draft
There's
thing through it.
a bit of a typo there.
There's the first part of it is the grants draft,
But the report
community
itself.
drafts.
But
The first part of the attachments was the multi and single year community drafts with the lines through it.
Like that one.
That's interesting.
I definitely speed read that the first one.
Yeah, no, the one with the lines in it was the draft for the grant application, and then the chief executive officer's report comes in after that. There are no lines through it.
No,
I haven't got any lines.
Yeah, someone failed all the typos.
Okay, so has anyone got any feedback for Don? It's probably quite good to try and do things a little bit differently. I guess the interesting one is the projects and just the ones that are at risk and
Yeah, and I was going to comment on the at risk terminology. It covers a wide span of things from minor to major, and it's really just a prompt, if you like, to just indicate there are issues still to potentially resolve with respect to various aspects of those projects. This span of projects too is not complete in terms of what is happening across the organisation, and some of them are pretty much of a minor nature, but we're trying to, because projects are happening in so many different places, logistically to bring them together in a consistent way in terms of, and at a consistent level, if you like, of importance, is really just something that we're working on.
How are you getting on with, or how's staff getting on with getting contractors to do this work? Is it still is there still tension there?
Yeah, probably, yes, contractors and consultants, probably more in the area of engineering consultants. That tends to be a challenge. They're just simply, there's so much on that trying to get them to come and have a look at your particular issue is not easy, and you need, invariably have to wait quite a number of weeks. Project planning is another one, of course, where, our capacity internally to deliver projects is limited, but trying to engage with professional external project planners too. It's hugely expensive, and again, it's a skill area that's not readily available.
Caleb.
Kevin had his light on first.
Kevin's first, okay, Kevin.
I'm loving the project table. That's amazing. That's all something that I think we would have been wanting for a while. And it's a simple tool for someone asks us a question to say, yep, it's going ahead. It's started. It's whatever. And it gives us an idea too of the scope of works that the council is actually doing at the moment. So when we make a decision to make them have more to do, we realise that there are 77 other projects already underway, sort of scenario. I'm assuming we're still going to have Q&A at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we've got a few things.
Cool. Now I'm loving it. I think this is a great format, Don. Yeah.
It's been a while cranking up, but we've done a complete review of our project management system, and we're rolling it out and starting to get it picked up by people who have responsibility to utilise that system to manage their projects. So it's what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that hopefully the level of consistency or the level of information will be consistent and current, and hopefully improve as that system is picked up across the organisation.
Simple, like management individual study, budget and build type discussion underway, resource consent process underway, consultants engaged. Gives you all the current information that you can pass on to someone who's going to say, well, what's happening? You know,
I'll bring that up in Q&A too, if you like. Just some detail around that.
Some of the formatting might need to be a little off. There's some of the tables that kind of like moved that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
But no, apart from that, it's awesome.
Okay, Caleb.
Well, thank you very much, Don. I quite like the layout, aside from the formatting issues and the one well-noted spelling mistake. I just have a couple of clarification things to ask you. Firstly, the asbestos found outside the swim zone site up here, how much is it, and is it significant work?
That's an example where I'm more than happy to follow up on that, but I don't have that too much. Sorry.
Okay,
I can certainly clarify that for you.
Thank you. And one last clarification thing. I've got system upgrade authority and system upgrade CM.
Sorry, jargon. So that's a corporate software system.
Okay.
Which essentially covers all our work, rates, debtors, creditors, connecting to our document management system, which is CM. So there's been a major upgrade that we've adopted, which is, I think I might have mentioned, has caused us some real challenges, and particularly in getting invoices out was one particular very public thing that we were struggling to issue our invoices. Those issues have been dealt with now. Thankfully, our rating bills didn't get affected. They still went out. But yeah, it was a major upgrade, and with any software upgrade, there's just 1,001 bugs that seem to fix that but destroy that. But yeah, we're there.
Well, thank you very much.
One thing, the only difficulty I had with it was that it's in like some sort of haphazard order. Would it be possible to maybe put it into ward, order, and
good idea.
And district at the bottom, and whatever, that would make it easier to.
No worries. We can split it up into geography or type, whatever. But I'll
type.
I'll get that for you.
Russell.
Yeah, I like it. The set out, Don, and I think it's a lot easier than what we've had in the past. The question I have is, I've got a couple of items I want answers on here. What's the easiest way forward for us is to email you the question with each one rather than raise it in a council and take it up?
Absolutely. If I get a chance before the meeting date and of course the answer can then be shared with everybody publicly on a meeting date, but if you get a chance to email me, that'd be really cool.
It's straightforward. It's I think what we needed.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's definitely an improvement. Gary,
I guess that, thank you for this report, Donald. I think it looks awesome. I just wanted to maybe get a sense of UE engagement across all of these.
Yep.
I see this huge number in there.
Yeah.
A couple of aspects that I just give you a bit of cause to worry about. But
yep.
How does that affect the relationships that is
in terms of
engagement
in particular for particular projects and so forth? Yeah, it would be fair to say that that's an area where we perhaps are not as consistent as we would like to be. And the challenge is that the iwi are also challenged by being asked to, or given the opportunity to respond or have input. So that's really at the base of that MOU or JMA, joint management, joint operations agreement, which we are looking to advance, because that will give better clarity about things that are important and are not important. But certainly staff are very aware of when they pick up a project, part of the project process is to engage with iwi and others that have an interest in those things. But we're mindful of the fact that it's unreasonable to throw 20 projects at a particular body and get meaningful feedback. So we're conscious of that. Yeah, it's work in progress.
Chris. Financials.
Yep. So we have just dry run all managers providing detailed feedback on monthly expenditure, operational expenditure to date, capitalisation to date, and a number of other things I won't bore you with. I've got a meeting with the wider management group next week. Go over that because we'll be bringing forward our first quarter report in the near future for council's benefit, and hopefully the system that we've put in place will provide you with monthly operational updates, and I'll be talking that all over with the 30 managers next week.
Okay, are there any other further questions?
So you sent us an email, what was it, yesterday, about the GM appointments?
Yep.
So they're not public knowledge, obviously, yet?
They are now.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, because just here it says 6th of October.
Oh, okay.
That's
right.
I was just wanting to clarify.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Congratulations. Good choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. With that, would someone like to move that the information be received? Thank you, Caleb. Second, Bruce. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, just running a little bit ahead of schedule, so we'll break for morning tea, and we'll move into public exposure after morning tea.
Yeah.
It's now time to put the meeting back up. We're now 7.7, the Sahara and Spa project.
7.8.
Oh,
7.8.
7.8.
Oh, it's been changed around. There is the first item. Clarification. This is 7.7.
Oh, sorry.
It's been put up there. But it is the first item, which is 7.7, and then 7.8.
I've got 7.9.
I've got 7.7.
Yeah, I know. And 7.8 is the second item.
7.7 is the electoral office. In my review.
Oh,
We've got
minus
different
one.
answers.
Okay, I've got it.
Well, that's the name.
Yeah.
There's two 7.8s on the paper.
Yeah, there's a bit of
7.8
confusion.
to 7.9.
Yeah. Okay, so with 7.8, you've got the new updated agenda. So this is Graham's paper. All clear? Right. Back quick, Graham.
It's 2.8.
Yeah. Go for it.
So I suppose, Norm's, provided that introduction, based on that public excluded sessions just then. I think we know who we're talking about in terms of Party A and Party B. So I guess, happy to take any questions and discussion with regard to the report. But just to reconfirm, we have both those parties interested as investors, and one way or another, they can bring capital to the project. They want to come and visit in October, which I'm thinking will be the sort of second half, later part of October, so that they can investigate things further and develop their thinking on the back of those visits. One of those parties is reasonably familiar with Te Araha and a little bit of familiarity with the project, so it's not their sort of first rodeo. The other party, Party A, is less familiar with Te Araha, having not been here, but has a reasonable sense of things because they've been through the investment memorandum, which is, I guess, whet their appetite and got them to this point. So in the case of Party A, that would be at least two people coming from Australia. In the case of Party B, would be, I think, I don't know exactly, but I think one person would be coming from Australia, the other one would be urban within New Zealand. So, they're here to invest their time and cost of travel and everything to actually make that visit happen.
Okay, question.
Ding. So the extra 40,000. So that means that we would, the provision of project management and governance. So that means that you're asking for us to get the governance group formed.
Well, in effect, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so that's for the governance group.
And that would be from October, November, and December. And that, I guess, its working assumption is that if we have those visits in October and that develops into something, then there'll be some stuff to do.
Graham, the governance group put a plan together, and these people aren't interested in that plan. They're actually interested in looking at what they could possibly do. That is the thing that draws the line for me. Is that the plan that the governance group put forward isn't actually what these people are coming to talk about. They're coming to talk about the opportunities for them to look at what they possibly can do in the management contract.
Yeah, I think they're not picking that concept up and saying,
correct,
we're going to run with that. They're saying that we see that concept, we like the location and a few other aspects, but we have a different view and vision around what that sort of scale up might look like and what the content of the property would look like. Yeah.
Here, Jane. Peter?
Yep. My concern is that I don't know how timeframes work in the commercial world, But, you know, if I was super keen on investing in something, my feelings are that they had sufficient time to come and look at Te Araha already and suss out any possibility. And it's been many, many months since information went to them. And now we're looking, you know, in October for them to actually come and suss it out in a revised version. So I'm just concerned about how keen these people might be.
Well, I think, you know, on the basis that they're prepared to, you know, do all that travel and spend the time coming through, I think what we needed to do was, with the capital raising process, was to, you know, let that process unfold, which was sort of February to end of August was the timeline. So we needed to sort of let that unfold. I think that in the case of Party B, for sure, you know, once we had that sort of a long list, and then we're down to sort of short list, and finding out people's, I guess, appetite, level of interest, what that looked like, you know, just took that amount of time. I think they probably couldn't have done it any sooner. Reality, because we didn't have enough information. In the case of Party B, their ability to invest and bringing alongside a co-investor is a sort of relatively new development to them, because of some things that have changed at their end.
Yeah, so I probably similar question. So A and B obviously didn't visit in that initial, you know,
that number junket.
Yeah.
That wasn't to do so much with the project.
No, but the investor that came through, yeah. So I suppose, yeah. So similar question to Peter in a way, in terms of what is normal for, you know, once they visit, because they've obviously got, well, you would expect they've got a plan in their minds. I know we've seen the bullet points in the report, and the visit will then obviously just, I suppose, clarify what their issues are. So I mean, so in a commercial world, I mean, what is the time frame for them to make a decision? And sometimes that decision will be dependent on us agreeing as well. So and I'm conscious that, you know, the latter part of October, and then suddenly we are into December, and suddenly we're into summer, and so I'm just curious in terms of if you know what kind of time frames they'd be talking about, or what time frames that you guys in the governance group are putting on them.
Yeah, look, it's a little hard to be precise, but I would think that, you know, on the basis that they're the back end of October, and that's been mooted by them because of some people have been on holiday and all different things. So so that's their suggestion. I would think that in the case of Party A, this is all sort of relatively new to them in terms of they haven't been to Te Araha. So they've got a sort of, I guess, a deeper investigation. In the case of Party B, there's a bit of familiarity with the town and the project, so they're sort of starting a little bit further forward. But I would have expected that, you know, they come here in October, at some point in November, and let's be conservative and say it's the latter part of November, they would come back with some thoughts about what they see as the next steps, or one of them might say, look, we're out for whatever reason, or they might both come back and say, we're interested, here's our high level thinking around how we would take this forward. And then we've got a decision to make around, you know, which one we continue to work with or not. I think that wouldn't be an unusual sort of way of things unfolding.
So based on kind of what you've said, and then they may, you know, come back in a month or two after they come and visit the area and things. I mean, that's one thing that could happen. The other thing that potentially could happen is that they go, oh, we're looking at some information and we're going to roll into Christmas and we'll have a think about it and we'll come back in January or February. So, I mean, that could just as well be what happens. It might go against the norm. But so if we were to, you know, approve $40,000 for the governance group to go through December, in that situation, what stops them, you know, what stops you coming back and going, oh, we haven't heard yet, we're going to roll on for another 2 or 3 months? Is there a way that potentially, like, I mean, I don't know what the governance group, after you show them around the site. Is there a way that the governance group can just pause until we hear back, whenever that might be, so that we can guarantee that we don't need to put any more than $40,000 into this, even if it rolls into next year or whatever that might be?
Yeah, no, take that on board, and I think that it's, I've just made an assumption that there are steps to take as we go through November and December. But if there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. I've just made an assumption that there is something to do through that period. But if there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do.
This is probably for you, Dawn. So if we were to disband the governance group, could we then go on to keep somebody from it
There's several
at
ways.
an hourly rate to facilitate these meetings with these potential investors?
Yeah, that is another way of looking at it. I mean, if there was work to be done, we could agree that whoever, if the members of the governance committee work on an hourly basis, or Graham is retained on an hourly basis, so we only do what we have to do, as you put it, Graham, as opposed to having a retained arrangement. Yes.
Russell.
Probably, just to get my head around it, just what Sarah Jane and Joanna just said, is that 40,000 in the big picture, what we spent already, to me is not a great deal. Could we carry on without the governance group, as just mentioned, which is one way we could do it. And my concern would be come December 31st, at the end of it, how are you going to come back? We get back together in February and want another 40,000 or whatever. So that are my concerns. But I'm certainly a great advocate for it, Tiara boy, and what if we go ahead? But I've always said right from the very start, if it doesn't stack up, I have trouble supporting it. But certainly supporting what I'm hearing now. But the question is the governance group required at 100% or not?
And I think that's probably a decision for council, because that was, we put that arrangement in place at the outset because that was the desired structure, the appropriate structure seen at that point in time. So it's probably a decision for council. But I get where you come from, Norm, jump in if any thoughts. But I think that it's really, as I say, my assumption was that if we've got visits in October and there's an ongoing process through to the end of the year, that's what that would look like. But as Dane says, maybe they do the visit and they say we're busy with a bunch of other things and we'll just wait until we get on the other side of Christmas, in which case we just everything gets parked until our coming back, and they probably will both come back at different timelines, just because of whatever is happening in their worlds.
Yeah, I'll go to Caleb. So you want to say? Yep.
Just look, honestly, commercial reality, they come in October, they may not make a decision until April, May, June, July next year. It's not the sort of thing that you jump in and go, yahoo, here's my money, away you go. This could be continuing on and on. I would like to see the project continue, but I am concerned with the governance group. I'll be very honest that you took the project to that level, and thank you very much for that. But that's not what the project is going to end up to be. And I think that you've done a magnificent job, but this could go on for another 2 months, another 2 months, another 2 months. Commercial reality is we're 6 months before anybody's even going to say, hey, yeah, that sounds good. So, that would be my issue, that we keep somebody that we can use to keep progressing a project, but perhaps not the plan that was put forward.
Yep. What if these two potential investors come through, which we look at? What involvement will the governance group have, or what would you see the governance group's involvement in that, as distinct from saying, can we put them on hold and employ perhaps you to do this involvement with those two, to see what they're going to come through with, and then reinstate if there's a possibility, if there's some positive things coming in of it. I'm trying to look at where the dollar's coming from.
I think John probably needs to
Yes.
answer that one.
Yep.
I think there are several phases to this, if I could comment. I think that if there is support for hosting the potential investors and giving them the opportunity to reflect on whether they wish to take the matter forward in any way, is one step. But beyond that, if there is keen interest, moderately keen interest, that I don't think council in the discussions we've had today would underestimate the complexity of getting involved with a commercial operator and the risks around that and the skill sets needed for both the legal and financial matters that would be associated with commercial negotiation. And so I would be thinking in that phase, the skill sets we'd be looking for to best advise council without fear or favour will be potentially different. Yeah. Because, and I think we've made these comments before and the council's acknowledged them, we want people to tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear.
Yeah, I think I'm just going on from that. I sort of signalled it in my paper here that, if you get to the point where, look, that you've described there, then, that's a good point to have got to, because you've got a live deal, assuming that it all sort of shapes up what people are happy with. But it's, how do you, what's the process to get there? And I think that once these people have been and done their visits, then, we'd be want to get from them a very clear indication of their appetite to do something and what might that something look like. So we'd want to get that from them pretty quickly, and I'd be surprised if we can't get that sort of information from them in the course of November. Are you interested? What's your vision? What's your view? And flushed it out pretty quickly.
Did that answer your question?
I might come back.
Okay, Caleb. Yep.
It is a shame that they didn't take to the project design as the governance group came to. However, I'm going to echo the comments of Councillor Bourne here that perhaps there is time for even a temporary or a definite abeyance for a time, so that we can minimise the cost that this is going to be having for every single ratepayer. If we're going to keep funding it, if we've exhausted the PGF funds and it's now our burden to carry, I would want to make sure that we're being as wise as possible with ratepayers' money. So that's my point is, let's put a hold on this and maybe move to an hourly rate. And until that point, abeyance.
Peter.
I've got a question of you, Don. So you talk about complexities which could happen, down the track a bit.
Yeah.
But in my mind, initially, these parties will come along and have a look, and I think yes or no could happen quite quickly. The first 5 words of the first recommendation state council progress the investor process. And my question is, can council do that without the governance group? I mean, do we have the resources in council to be able to do that?
No, and I think that's a fair point. I think we don't have the capacity or the skill sets necessary to deal with assessing and judging something as complex as this. And I'd also point out the complexity of this project also involves the regulatory consenting, all that sort of stuff, depending on what the proposition is. So again, I think would be dependent on external advisors that were working for us to do an appropriate brief to take the matter beyond an initial visit and a reaffirmation from those possible investors that they are interested in going further. I think at that point, council will be faced with having to engage external resources to help it in the process.
Right. So I want to see it. I want to see some progression because we've spent a lot of money. There is still potential. We've got to determine how much more we put in. I want to know, or is there a need for the governance group to be part of that discussion with these two potential investors, or can it be done with the resource perhaps of grain? And to identify whether they're going to go ahead, and then we might bring them back, the governance group back in again for that overall expertise. That's what I want. If there's potential. Yeah. And so have I explained?
Yes. Right. We're trying to minimise the cost.
Minimise the cost, make sure we know we've got what we need.
Yeah.
And if there's potential to carry that through, do we bring that expertise back in?
Yeah. Before I go to James,
sorry.
I guess the question here is the complexity of this project. We've formed this governance group to get us to this point, and it's going back to Don's, is the where to from there is another stage, and that's another conversation that hasn't perhaps been had, and that's where the governance group is. There is an end point. So I guess it's what we come to today is how we find a way forward. I'll go to James because he's had his light on for a while.
Yeah. Thanks for the report. As always, an exemplary piece of work. I guess I'm interested in the process, and I think that 7.8 is quite relevant, which is the next decision on the next step of the Te Aroha Spa project. Really, in my mind, would be useful to consider that first, because as the CE indicated, we had a process here where we got to an investment case. And it wasn't just the concept plan, it was also the fact that the council was investing like 18 million and taking on more than half the risk associated with it. So it was the whole package. And as of today, there is no one willing to invest in that, period. So when I'm looking at the decision on the Te Aroha Spa project, you know my views, and that's about council investment in commercial entities, period, not this particular project. But if I was to look at the outcome of the Destination Spa project for Te Aroha, it is at a logical end now, and a decision should be made in light of that. Separate to that, the council has expressed an appetite to be open for business generally. And I think the council can make a decision. We've got two investors that are interested. They haven't specified, it's certainly not in any meaningful way what was on the table, but they're interested. And if a potential investor came to the council about building, I don't know, a bed factory, then the council would make efforts to advance that. And that is a decision that would be made separate and apart from anything that's gone before. So I probably am not going to, if we're voting on 7.8 now, the Te Aroha Spa project, I would probably be not voting on that one. Because I think a more logical approach would be to firstly consider the project that we've got in front of us before we work out what the next steps are.
Kevin.
Pretty much what James just said. And if we were going to have someone liaise with these people, again, James said, separate from that initial investment, I would be probably happy to have both the two gentlemen sitting at the front involved. Because they cover different areas of expertise. And I mean, Norm's been around a long time. Most of us know him around the council table, I mean. It's expertise that we want, and he would bring some as well. So if he was available, of course, I'm willing to do it. But I agree with James. I think we need to consider the next one before we consider this.
So, yeah, and just to be clear, it could well be that it is in fact the same setup.
Yeah.
But for me, that's a new decision from first principles. We've finished the current project. We're at the end point of that one. And it's about providing certainty for the community. It's not just about managing risk. I think it's also about providing certainty. And then tidy up any loose ends around that expectation, whatever that looks like. And then it's, we've got a couple of minutes here, based on the information that's in hand. How can we advance that? And I guess a scenario I'm thinking is, if these investors had come in a year's time, I don't think we would be kicking them to the curb. I think we would be approaching them as a council that's open for business. It just wouldn't be tangled up with expectations from a project that hasn't, in my view, delivered what had been hoped by the council.
James, you again.
Yeah, look, I think the governance group have done their job. I don't think there is a further role for them. I think, as hard as it is, sometimes we have to make the right decision, not always the popular one, and accept that the Te Araha Destination Spa project, as detailed in the business case, isn't viable. And so I can't support the governance group as a whole continuing. But I do understand that we, and do accept that we do need to see, what these two interested parties could offer. So about how we facilitate that is probably another discussion is needed.
Right. Well, I guess the other thing that I would ask is, obviously being new on the governance group, were these parties identified as potential investors back in the early days? They were people that were in the picture?
Only one, party B, you would say, they were interested in that they thought the location was great and the water and all the things were sort of, the sizzle
about it.
Yeah. So, they had a certain view and vision. In fact, they helped some of the input into that options assessment work. So, they weren't saying we're definitely investors at that point, but they certainly had an interest and liked what they saw. So clearly they needed to go on the list for when we were approaching.
So we've got a few views around the table. We've got to find a way forward. I hear there's a sort of feel for allowing the flying in on their own expense, to have a look at what we've got here and what they might see as an opportunity. And like you said, James, being open for business. I get the feeling that there is a definite issue around the costs going forward, because we've, and while it's not significant, we've already spent a lot of money on this project, and I think that the way I see it is this is a different aspect to what the brief was. It's an add-on. It is to me a little different proposal to what was coming through. In saying that, I think there's some excellent feedback provided from doing that investment proposition, getting people out there, getting their views. I think we all understand and appreciate that it's the water that people are interested in, and the spa side of it with the massage is an add-on, but it's the water that is the primary attraction.
Really important. Yeah.
And obviously we've got a facility there, and it's what does it look like in the future. We've got a long-term plan. There is funds in the long-term plan. That is a significant decision. So whatever decision we make, we have to take that into account. So this isn't a straightforward decision that we're making today. There's a lot of legalities around it, and it's one thing today, and it's another thing as to where we go forward. So I'll go with Bruce.
So we could conclude that the Te Araha Destination Spa project as detailed in the business case. Developed by the project governance group is not viable in the current economic and market conditions. We could pause or the project governance group and the project manager, and we could continue to explore the alternative options from the two interested investors, right, to enhance or redevelop the existing spa facilities.
They may have an interest in doing something with the existing facility, but there hasn't really been.
Whatever, we're interested in visiting.
Well,
We already have a facility, that's the point.
Yes, we just.
There is the interest in the original plan.
Do a reset.
So, Caleb,
That's what I'm trying to get, is a reset.
Caleb, have you got another comment to make that'll add to this? Or have you another question, or go for it?
So kind of just thinking this through a little bit, is now that I think we're all in agreement that the initial plan, the initial destination thing is finished. Now we need to be absolutely certain that moving forward, we have, for me, the biggest concern I've got is endlessly moving goalposts. So when you go to kick the ball, if it's moving further and further away, it's never going to get there. So I would be really, really particular, and you guys getting a clear answer on these potential investment parties as soon as possible, because if we're constantly delaying this, eventually people are going to look at it as time wasting and money wasting expense. And we need to be absolutely certain now that what we do is beneficial. And I think the governance group, as it is, has done its job. And thank you very much for that. You did a lot of hard work. Now we need to limit that sort of outgoing and do what we can with the minimum stuff.
So I'm sort of tying together the next item as well. So Derek, I'll go to you first.
So just the opportunity to acknowledge the thinking around long after we're gone, the whenua will remain. And so within their corridor is this notion of there will always be an opportunity. There will always be an opportunity for mahi rangatira hapua, no matter what it is. And so I'm thinking today, as I'm listening to the corridor, going around our table, here, kia whakaamboia te opu whakarai. So to lay to rest the governance group as part of the project that was taken on board with the terms of reference that we designed those years ago, but to hand it back to the rangatira of the governance group to take on board that and kia takatohi nei te manuka, kia moia. So to take it on board as a governance group that your project has been pushed, so that it is you that determines pulu te tēnei o whasumaiwai te. But the other part is some corridor that I'm also reminded of. Ma te atua he te kura aro maira, he te tira. So within that corridor is this notion that although one shoot in the forest may pass, may die off, another shoot will always rise. And so within that, there's this whole corridor around, carrying on some conversations as an interested group to advance what might be the next shift that's about to come up for us as council. So just wanted to try and compartmentalise, I guess, this corridor for me in a Matarama space, and get the mana back to the governance board to make that decision for the betterment, I guess, for this kaupapa, for this council, for our ratepayers, I guess, but also to be able to acknowledge that there are opportunities on the horizon that we might be able to advance and carry forward.
Thank you, very good.
Can I just respond? Yeah, can I just respond? Mena I ka tika kia koe te matua tautoko nei ngā whakaaro. Kei konei ngāti tumutumu tonu. Kei konei te mana whenua hei aki, hei tiaki ngā manuwhiri, ngā investors me ki. Ko te wai te mea nui, ko te aroa o te tangata te mea nui, te whakaaro Māori te mea nui. So just translated, I acknowledge them. And my Matua's discussion and points raised around Te Ao Māori in the context of the project. Ngāti Tumutumu will remain in the area, anyway. And the kaupapa that has been acknowledged as the way, but it's actually interconnected with the maunga, the whenua, the whakapapa of, and the attributes of the area. So with regards to certainly partnership, Ngāti Tumutumu are here as partners with our council, and we acknowledge that in terms of governance as a co-chair, we have achieved key KPIs as set by our council, but we know that there's further work to be done, and with my Ngāti Tumutumu hat on, we want to continue with those investors to Manaaki Tāwhi so that they can help provide another shoot in the context of this particular development. So I just want to acknowledge that Te Ao Māori whakaaro that's been set.
I was just going to say, Adrian, can we go to recommendation?
Yeah,
I would like to put recommendation 1. I'm very happy with.
Yes, that's what I was considering, is that probably number 2 in this item, we aren't there yet. And it sort of blends in. Erin's come up to the table as well because we're sort of going into the next phase. Sorry, Peter, I'll see Elijah. Whether it's appropriate to come to a conclusion on item recommendation 1, and we can defer recommendation 2 until afterwards, or if you prefer to, because the thing is with this project, it doesn't just stop. That's a significant decision. It doesn't just stop. We have to consult. There is a legal requirement there, so it's how we go forward. So, would you be happy?
Why would we defer to
until we've discussed the next item?
Okay.
Because that might flesh out what it means. Because I'm hearing different views. I'm hearing an appetite for considering progressing the investor, but it's how we go about it that number 2 isn't necessarily crystallised for us. I get a feeling that there is a desire to keep going, and it's in what form. So before we get to the big stuff, we do number 1. If someone's happy to move, number 1, the recommendation that council progress the investor process with the 2 interested parties, confirming their visits and carry out any appropriate process support. No, I'm just discussing it. Like, is there? I wanted to discuss
who's going to progress it.
Yes,
right.
But this is the initial bit, and then if we talk about the project and where we're going, because in the next item we have that. There are the recommendations around the project governance group. In the next agenda item, we've got 2 with the next steps. So technically, are you blending this in as a next step that's separate from this project? I'm just trying to get some clarity around.
Just the first 7.8 complete to go to 7.9 and then come back to it.
And come back?
Yeah, rather
You'd prefer to do that?
do part of it.
James? Yeah.
Well, like I feel like that's a little bit preempting what 7.9 is going to look like.
Okay, so we'll
what
go
I
back,
think we
we'll
should
go
be doing is not addressing this particular one right now
and move forward,
because it may just logically come from the collective view of the council, right?
Thank you. That's what I was trying to flesh out.
Because I guess I agree with that basically if the council recommendation was that it progresses an investor process, then there needs to be some commitment as to how that's funded.
No, that's so you get that. Have I sort of got a few nods around the table?
I was going to just emphasise what I was going to say, or vice versa. That if council moves to carry on this investigation, well, it's hard to do that without knowing how that process will happen. Who does council think is going to facilitate the process of listening to these 2 other people and putting some ideas on paper and that sort of thing? So
yeah, and that's what we've been talking about within the membership of the group, and not forgetting there's Anna from NZTE. Now, what role might she play as well? Does she have a role at all in this?
I think that she would naturally join the visits, yeah.
From New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, so.
But NZTE, it's a free resource.
It is, and that's my point, is because she was very involved.
Our resolution today, really,
It's deferring the first two.
Mate,
So
the
after we,
resolution today needs to give some flexibility in how we, because we can make a firm and hard understanding here, right? We're then tied to it unless if the wording of the resolution is such that it gives some flexibility to how we approach this
next process.
Next process.
Thomas, be careful with your feet. You're about to get yourself booked up in the mic.
Yes. You're in a view, like there's an appetite here to jump from this paper and go to the next one. Have you got some, or is there some clarity from staff here? Because I think we're going to risk of going around in circles.
Good morning, everyone. Really great to hear the discussion around the room. I think that one of the things I just mentioned to me, Adrian, was considering that whatever your decisions today, you need to consider your significance and engagement policy. So just wanted to draw your attention to legal advice, which now kindly circulated in my absence in the week around the need to undertake that community consultation. Just wanted to draw your attention to that. My other observation is that in terms of the project governance group, if you're wanting to have it more on an as required basis, at the moment there is a retainer mechanism there as well. So that might be something that can be discussed with the group around if you'd like to draw them in for specific meetings. You might pay them on reimburse them on a per meeting basis. But aside from those observations, I'll leave it in your hands to have that discussion. Yeah, Adrian.
Right.
Can I just jump in and say something in terms of what we've always done? I'm not trying to speak against anything that's been said this morning, but we've always been able to do with this project is create stage gates. So, none of us are here to sort of waste time and money and any of that sort of stuff. So it is an iterative process, and I don't think we were setting up an expectation that we get to the end of August and say, well, in the idea we got today, here's the instant pudding. That was always a bit of a long shot, but we're hoping to get at least one interested party bagged by the end of August. But it is a question of setting up stage gates so that it doesn't just sort of meander on aimlessly. And the visits are not
Which it could
would
do.
be that stage gate.
Which it could do.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, you have those visits, get that feedback as quickly as you can, and there's another decision stage gate.
Bruce? Kevin, you've got your light on.
I mean, based on the legal advice we have got, we do, if we change it dramatically, we do have to go significance and get out there and do consultation. What we need to do is something that doesn't dramatically affect what's already in the LTP. And if we can work out what that is, that won't.
I mean, we won't know that until these people turn up. Yeah.
You simply defer it.
The first decision is whether or not to cancel or pause or defer or do something that actually doesn't stop the process dead in its tracks, and we then have gone against the LTV. So and we do have to consult with significance. So we haven't got a choice really. So
I think
so
Yes, James Sherman.
To be. Yeah, to refine the current tariffs market, charity and consider additional analysis to reflect market feedback provided today.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're going to do with these two people.
We don't even know.
Well, we can't. I mean, personally, I don't think we can pause it until we have these people.
Information.
And we just don't have the information to pause it, stop it, do whatever. So I'm challenged by that really. I mean, I'd like to see well, I think the mood is that we've come so far, we need to see what these A and B have to offer. And then we've got to come back to the table and then say, well, no, we're not happy with A and B, and we're done, or
we defer from the long-term
we're
plan.
deferring to the long-term plan. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff in this agenda. I thought, it's very hard to do a lot of them before these people come.
I just feel, sorry, I'm going to continue the conversation. I just feel that you get somebody in October that's 20th.
Yeah.
There's no way they're going to tell you by December.
No, and that's cool. But
they need time. They need 6 months to think
and I'm not saying that that's the next meeting's thing. So it's we need that information before we can make the decision based on it.
Project governance group sitting here.
No, but somebody's got to facilitate, and it needs to come from that group to facilitate that visit, collate the information from it. That comes back to us, and in the meantime, and then we can make a decision. I can't see how we can.
Can we put them on a retainer?
Sorry.
Can we just put them
Well,
on
meeting, you mean a meeting is what Erin was suggested.
Yeah, I agree. These guys already have the relationship with these two people, the two entities anyway.
That's right.
So it's no point in reinventing the wheel and having a whole new bunch of people all of a sudden start dealing with them. That makes no sense. So just refining gives us an opportunity to hear if the answer is a definitive no,
that's fine.
Well, no, probably by the end of the year. If it's a maybe, you could be right. So it could drag on until December next year. But at least we'll have if it's a no, we'll have a definitive no. So we've got to give them the opportunity. The focus, the whole spa focus may change from spas to bathing. Let's see what they say.
The project governance group were pitching for a different kind of level. That's what I'm concerned about. That wasn't their views.
Yeah.
So these people, we don't know what their views might be. Be a big pool with a spark with a slide in it,
Could be
Okay, so the point of Jane.
Yeah, so I guess reiterating what I said before, yes, of course, these potential investors need to be understood further and understand what that looks like. Fine. But some amount of money will be identified from somewhere to do that through some iteration that involves the project governance group for the spa. I understand that. The other big thing here, which I think is that there's 18 million in the long-term plan, so taking a couple of steps back, when this was first initiated, the commitment the council made was to see whether the business case stacked up. There was no commitment to investing. However, there was an allowance of 18 million in the long-term plan moving forward. We are going out to consult on a long-term plan in about 7 months' time. Based on the information that I have in hand at the moment, I do not think there should be $18 million in the long-term plan for the next iteration. Now, that's going to be consulted on. It's going to be something that's understood. It's not a decision that we can make, but this is about making sure that we are honest about what the opportunities look like when we're projecting forward 10 years. So I have been very open about my starting point on the council, on governments investing in commercial entities. Of course, I remained open to things being changed, but nothing that's been presented to me thus far has suggested that it's a good idea for councils to invest in commercial entities. So this, for me, sits in two pieces. Number one is, what do we do with these people that are interested? And I am fully supportive of that being taken to its logical conclusion, whatever that looks like. That's fine. And I'm happy to support funding. I assume it will be some iteration of the project management group, and I'll defer to the CE's advice on what looks good for that one. No problem. But I also want to be very clear that my position now, in terms of this 18 million thing that is going to be occupying the council for the next 10 years, plus it stops now. Basically, I've never been comfortable with the idea of it, and nothing has been presented to me to date to suggest that that is ever going to be a good idea. So I think that's where the second piece of direction needs to come from my perspective, is that when we are, based on the information that we have at the moment, and we're preparing a long-term plan for consultation now, I think we need to give certainty to the community about what a realistic opportunity looks like. And I think there has been huge opportunity cost to the council, both in terms of the commercial investment and the capacity investment and the emotional investment in this project. So that in no way reflects on the project management group. That's a political thing about the decision making here. So that's what I want to see. And if there's some variation of recommendations that satisfy those requirements, I'm happy with that. But I really, and I guess I go back to this idea of these potential investors. If we had not done this project and potential investors came to us with anything, for anything on this scale, you've got a fantastic piece of land, you see a lot of potential, you want to invest in it, I think the council would take that very, very seriously. And that's not, and so we would still do that here. It's just about what the council's capacity and what we're putting into it and what the capital investment looks like. You know, that for me is finished.
Except that we have to consult on it.
Which is
part of the
and
process.
that's absolutely fine. And so
With a transparent
I've already been having continuous discussions about what this project looks like and would expect to continue to have clear and open discussions.
But it also doesn't mean that nothing happens, you know, up there. It's just that this project as it is wasn't it? That's something we've gone.
Well, the return on investment was, marginal. Yeah. So,
As it said, my recommendation would be we pause it and take exactly the word that's in the legal advice. A pause to reevaluate options and market conditions, bearing in mind that none of the options before today are the ones that council would be in a position to approve. So that's it. And
To me, it's just options, recommendation 1 and 2.
But is pausing it just kicking a can further down the road, or no? That's what concerns me.
Pause the cover, pause the. You've got some. Yes.
Sorry, I think Peter had his light on.
So I agree with Kevin, but before I could, support pausing this, I feel council needs to investigate all the possibilities. There's 2 further possibilities. I'm quite happy to move recommendations 1 and 2, because I think the best people to get these parties over here to investigate this further are the people that have done the work to date. And it's unfortunate it's going to cost more money, but the damn thing's cost a whack of dough anyway. So I will move.
You're prepared to move it, yeah.
1 and 2.
Bruce, yeah. I'll just make sure we've just cleared our conversation. Yeah.
He's talking about the
The first 1 and 2.
The first report.
I don't agree with 2, but I certainly.
7.8.
Yeah,
that was
regarding,
yeah, options regarding the future.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Do we want to continue, and what do we want to do with the group? Simple as that.
It does stay up to.
Yes, it does stay up.
Doesn't say about.
So,
yeah, we're jumping backwards and forwards between
We
the
are
2
jumping
items.
backwards and forwards, but they've got to be included together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we understand that it's what's been put ahead isn't achievable at the moment.
Yes.
Right. So we conclude that the Te Araha Destination Spa project, as detailed in the business case developed by the project governance group, is not viable in the current economic and market conditions.
Yes, I don't think that's a recommendation. We don't need to have that in recommendations. Like there is the recommendation that was brought forward by our legal experts. Options regarding the future of the SPA project to be presented as part of the LTP consultation. As part of the LTP consultation next year, and final decisions are to be made after consultation has occurred. That's a critical point, but it's finishing off this process first. And as Peter said, has moved and Gary has potentially seconded. I think that the challenge we have here is how we want the framework to continue on. Are you prepared to keep it? We can change the governance groups, in terms of
well, the
engagement.
in terms of engagement around, rather than a retainer or they have a meeting, like it's how we can alter that. Because the thing is now is that we're near the end. Are you prepared to spend 40,000 now, or do you want to renegotiate and trim it? We do need a conclusion to this sooner rather than later.
Adrian, the only problem is we were told this was going to finish in September. Now we're told it's going to be finished in December. Now we'll be told it's going to finish in February, March, or December.
And that's where is our direction is that the governance group follow through with the visitors, and there's an approach to get a feel. Are they a yes? Are they a no? Are they a maybe? Because we do have to cauterise it sooner rather than later, because it might be next year. So that's where there might be a final report giving that certainty in that direction, and then we go to the next phase of around the option in the long-term plan. I get what you're saying though about the 18.9, James.
Yeah, so I mean, if I was to go to, I guess it's 7.9, or let's say it was 7.8 on page 50. Number one, that the information be received. Number two, that the council pause the Te Aroha development project until economic and market conditions improve. And what I would have as an addendum to that is that this means that the $18.6 million investment will not be included in the long-term as a starting point for consultation, right? So that in terms of what we're putting out to the community is we don't know what this looks like for this project advancing. So we're not wanting to tie up resources in over the next 10 years. This is what we're basically saying to the community. This is what we can't, we can't see any obvious investment here. So let's just have a pause on there. The funds can always come back in the next long-term plan. That's what I would consult on. Where secondary to that, I would say that council, and then I would then add, council progresses the investor process with the two interested parties. Council approves the Te Aroha Spa reserve up to $40,000. I would just go with all of that stuff as the simple thing. And then I would also say that in the absence of that the council prioritises the implementation of the Te Aroha Pride of Place plan for implementation, including the establishment of a Te Aroha Community Forum, and consider inclusion of monies from the existing Te Aroha Spa Reserve in year one of the 2024-2034 long-term plan for the purposes of the detailed domain master plan and or destination management plan. I really feel like we owe it to the community to provide some certainty. We don't want to close the door, but on what this could look like in any permutation. But I think in terms of what I would like to deliver, be able to deliver to Te Aroha over the next 3 years, is some certainty that we are going to be ticking these boxes off, as I just said. That there is going to be that the long-term plan comes around every 3 years, as Sue's indicated. There's already been there's shifting goalposts on this entirely. So you know what? If in 2 years' time, I feel like that's a relatively short period of time, but with an investment of this scale, and if the council that is sitting here in 3 years' time, then they're developing the next long-term plan, have a lot more certainty around what that looks like, so be it. But the investment case that's been put out, it should never have included a commitment to 18 million, because it didn't. What it included, all that the council had committed to, was a willingness to understand the investment case. So as far as I'm concerned, the risk, the attractiveness of that hasn't changed if we just say we're not putting $18 million in moving forward, and I don't think we can do that.
I tend to disagree
slightly.
Yeah, we put it up there. Yeah.
I tend to disagree slightly, because I think Te Aroha needs some certainty.
Well, that's what James.
Yeah, but he wants to remove it from the long-term plan, I just feel. But anyway, that's a conversation that will come up in time. I think today is, do we look at these two people and do we continue with it? To me, it's just
I think there's a
question here. Do we continue with these two people that are interested, and do we continue with the project governance group, or do we find another option? And that's, to me, it's the answer, the question for today.
Yeah. Okay, Russell.
Just a simple one, just on the end of December, I'd like something put in there the 13th of December, which is our December council meeting. So whether the project management or the governance group, that's when they report back to us. Otherwise, we won't be in front of them until February.
Yeah,
So,
I think we need to put an end date on it.
yeah, 13th of December.
Good point. Peter?
I find all of the recommendations on page 50, there's too many of them. They're confusing to me. The first one doesn't even make sense, until economic and market conditions improve.
No, I think they've taken that out, haven't they?
Sorry, that's quick. But I don't think we need to decide on any of that stuff. I think recommendations 1 and 2 summarise where we should be in the first 7.8 agenda item.
Yep. That was the thing. We're
still happy to move those, but all the stuff here I see is just add-ons that can when more information comes to hand from those two possible investors.
Is that a nod of a head is around there that we just go
1 and 2 of 7.8, right?
Of the first 7.8.
And it's written up there?
No.
No, the first 7.8.
First 7.8.
Not the second 7.8.
Yeah, there was a mixture. This is the report that Graham brought forward. That we
7.2. Happy to move 1 and 2.
Are we in that position
I'm
to
happy
do that?
with one. I'm happy with one, but I'm not supporting two.
I can't.
At the end of
Yeah, so I was gonna say, is December, is December 2023 really a realistic?
No.
Like, so the 13th of December, if they come and say we're still doing our due diligence, you've only given us 6 weeks to think about a $36 million investment.
Yeah.
Are we going to say, nah, too bad? If we're going down this, I would question whether that's a realistic timeframe.
Yeah, but they're not thinking of $36 million investment. They're thinking of a revamped version of that.
Well, a staged.
I think that, tried to signal before, it is an iterative process. So you get to a defined process. But it is a bit iterative. I completely get that you don't want to be meandering on forever with, a whole lot of stuff. But it is a bit of an iterative process because there are the steps that need to be taken. I think that by the December meeting, if it's the 13th of December, we'll hopefully have some feedback from those two parties as to the nature of their interest, what that looks like.
And then we can make another decision then. I think that we can put an end point now
But as long
we're
as
going to put a bit of tension, we're going to put some tension on it. Yeah. This has been going for quite some time. We need to provide certainty. We can't just keep going into the never-nevers.
Can I just raise that, depending on council's direction today, we are aiming to bring the draft consultation document to you in December. So we can either, obviously we will get direction to include this as the consultation option, or otherwise we will consult on it post LTP as its own separate item. So I just wanted to raise that with you because we're obviously at the crunchy end, and I know Andrew's in the room from Connie as well. So I just wanted to signal where I can either do it that way around there was a suggestion around looking at those options. Otherwise we'll have to do it probably more mid next year, just by virtue of the amount of work we're going to do with LTP. So I just wanted to raise that.
Yeah, it's a timing matter, and of course the stuff sort of sitting in
that's absolutely fine. I just wanted to signal when we would have to squeeze that in.
But is it achievable? I guess if it was to go in there in December, is that realistic?
I mean, with an option, and looking at now, completely helping me with this, if it's options that we can pair some options. Did you have any thoughts now that you wanted to add around that?
No, except that leaving it open for you to consider how that LTP consultation might be framed will probably be beneficial right now.
Yes.
Not saying
we need to give direction
this or that. Allowing this process to just work its way through would be beneficial before you commit to what you might or might not include in the LTP. Because you'll be considering this as part of your overall budgets as well.
Exactly.
Very shortly.
Right. So I just really want to keep it going, but need to have everybody's conversation. Yeah. So James.
Yeah. So I'm still interested in one because I think we've got to do that. We've come so far. We need to hear what the people have to say. And I accept that it's not going to be, the grand plan is not there, and it's like in terms of that other one. If we're going to pause the Tierra State Development Project, we'd just be full stop. I wouldn't have the until economic stuff after that. But because part of that other 7.91, if you like, because one of the other options there was reducing the scale to a level that council can self-fund. And I mean, that might be something that we do look at, and that's why we're pausing. We're just pausing because those things can reactivate. But we've got to go through this, and then it just depends on number two. How much money do we want to commit for getting this information? And I like the tension of having it December because and I think if that's communicated with parties A and B, they know damn well that's it because we're at the end of our tether. And I don't quite know how we tie that together, and what sort of funding we have and who runs that. It's got to be governance group involvement, whether it's a whole lot, whether it's you two gentlemen there.
I'm just waiting for the ratepayer here.
No, ditto, and I just want to see, what we can develop for in Terra.
Sorry, just reframing a little bit the perception around economic and market conditions. I think that if they were dire, these two people wouldn't be. We'd have a 5-minute conversation earlier because we'd say there's no interested parties. Decision's easy. But I think that these guys, and if you look at it, this is a multi-year process for them to actually get an outcome. So they're taking a longer-term review. Yeah, we're in a bit of rough water at the moment, but it doesn't mean like it's always going to be like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I think if it was really rough, they wouldn't be turning up.
We need to make a decision. So Kevin,
I'm happy to second Peter.
Gary already had around 1 and 2.
But we backed ourselves into a corner by putting this into the LTP. We can't stop it. It has to just be paused. 100%. I don't see any way out of that. And I'm happy with those two as well. It does say up to 40,000. Let's leave it to someone else to figure out how that's going to work out. How they're going to be paid.
It's not a target.
That's why I use those words deliberately.
That's fine. But talking of stage gates, do we have the cultural report yet?
Do we?
We did? No? Not yet. But that was a stage. It was a really early stage gate. So
I would support one if we said council ask the project manager to progress the investor process with the two interested parties. All right, for completion by December.
Not completion, but
Well, for reporting back by December, at a budget of 20,000.
20,000.
Yep. Just one simple thing, and we're getting all the LTP and everything out of the way, and the conflict of that, all that. We're wanting that information. We all agree we need that information.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so Dane, you just got a quick word because the press is going to.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that the issue that I have is probably the cost of what those things are going forward. And if the project management group was to stay involved in this project, but it's going to cost $80,000 to do that. That's probably why a few of us are kind of drawing the line. Given that, additional 40,000 contingency to facilitate the investor party, you've already been through this process with a whole lot of potential investors. These guys have come to the party lately. I don't think that they deserve, even though they're interested, they don't deserve the same kind of, welcome party that the last ones did. They're a fly-by-night last-minute thing. They might be, very interested in it, but they kind of missed the boat. So I don't think, to me, if it's going to cost $40,000 to give them that same level of thing the other guys did, I can't see why you can't have 2 or 3 people that meet with them, person take them around the place. If they're interested, they'll fly themselves over. They'll pay for their own accommodation.
And they're probably looking at other properties as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, for me, if the second one was just 40 grand just to keep the project management group going, just to deal with it, and that was it, I would be okay with that. I don't want to spend another 40k, of ratepayers' money to show them around town. And I don't agree with sticking a time frame on anything or even reporting back, because there may very well be nothing to report back on. We're just going to have you sit at the table and go, oh, haven't heard anything yet. We're still waiting. So there's no point in hearing anything back until we've actually got something to hear back. To put a time frame on it is completely irrelevant. But so to me, I would definitely vote for 1 and 2, if you can keep those costs around 40 grand and keep the group together. And if you don't, you can do it for 40 grand, then disband it, and we'll just hire a couple of people back on an hourly rate to get the job done when they turn up.
Yeah, just take out that last bit.
Yep.
to
If you
get
think
in
that's
an
good.
additional.
Are you
So
thinking
we've got Peter, you're moving.
Yep, just,
I don't think we need a time, we can't have a time frame on it if people haven't reported back on anything.
Yeah.
but I disagree with Dane. I was going to change the second recommendation to read to 13 December 2023.
Yeah, that's too tight. You know,
I think that's too tight.
Absolutely. Around in circles, guys. We're on semantics now.
Yeah, yep.
Right.
That's very, very concise. That's right.
I guess to say the end of December, well, we're not meeting at the end of December. That is the crutch point. So
I mean, that doesn't even, that's not like them reporting back to us, is that? That's
No.
just when the funding's to. There's no date.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have any time. I would just, I mean, when it gets to the end of the money.
I wouldn't want to have a date finish on it. I want to say, there's your 40 grand, get to a conclusion, whatever that time frame is. I don't want it to run out in December and then we're going to go, oh, we haven't heard anything. And then we get another bill in February because they've started coming back to us. So the conclusion for that is when we've got a resolution about when the investors, when we've got an answer from the investors, that's when the 40 grand needs to last.
so they can divvy up the 40 grand however
Yeah.
they like, but that's it.
Yep.
I'm not even.
Well, come on, guys, we
Yep,
need to
yep.
put it on the table. So we've got,
Happy with that.
so who's now moving it?
I think,
Pete, because Peter, you did express initially.
yeah,
Well, Pete, you don't
let me
want to
read
do.
first. Let me read. Pick up the word two after government.
Is that doable from a governance perspective to say here's 40 grand, go and find it if the investors are?
Yeah, and that's what I put in there up to, because, I've made, conservative assumptions through October, November and December. And we'll surely be able to report something this December, I just don't know. That won't be the oven ready thing, but it will be information.
So are we completing this motion? If you're prepared to move that,
I still like to put it until the end of December 2023. I want a time frame up there. Otherwise, it go into next year and go on forever.
So you're just saying your number 3 would be council, the project manager and governance group to report back with an update.
I don't think we need the governance group. I
No.
thought we were just using the project manager.
Yeah.
We don't need the entirety of the governance group anymore. Their role is complete.
Yes.
but we do need a couple of them there to see it through.
Yeah, and that's what that
We've
40,000
got
For the
two
project
right here.
manager to do
Those
that.
two. These two right here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep.
So project managers.
You've had a promotion, no?
No.
Co-chairs.
Norm of
So
the-
co-chairs. Co-chairs too. Sometimes the co-chairs.
Yeah, it has to include them, chair.
Yeah, so kia ora tātou, as a councillor, Manawa and Hamilton City Council really joined the debate where you got to land on a decision, and I acknowledge that this decision is not easy and there's lots of intricacies around it. Certainly from a co-chair point of view, the governance group have done a significant job, and we are where we are now, and I can't underestimate the relationship that's been built and established with the expertise that's been had in the leadership of Kitty and others with those two investors. And so there's actually a correlation to the relationship that's actually quite vital as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you need to acknowledge. Certainly as a councillor elected managing the ratepayers funds, that's your discussion, but I just want to acknowledge the relationship that's been established with the expertise within the governance. I'm a governance member. I'm not a project manager in this particular role, so whatever role I play, it's certainly going to be unknown to me as a governance member, if that's the decision.
So, look, I'm happy to put a motion on the table that the council, has Peter put something on the table? Okay, so I guess, so there's a couple, so I would support that if it's for the provision of project management and governance to the end of June 2024, the end of the financial year. If the $40,000 gets the governance group as far as they need to, great. If they need more money, then they come back and explain and make a case for what that looks like. But it's the end of the financial year.
I think not a time frame. I think and governments, project management and governance too, the conclusion of the investors' interest in the project.
Well, so
that's what it is.
That's what it is. It's not a time frame.
It's still a finite dollar amount regardless.
Yeah, so I guess it was the finite dollar amount, right, that I'm interested in. And I guess what I saw the end point is not necessarily the reporting, but it's the end point is that if the 40K is not uplifted by the end of June, it's gone. Whereas the way that I read that before, it's like if the 40K is not uplifted by the end of December, it's gone. So given that we don't know how long it will take, given that the financial year ends and our budgets end at the end of June 2024, I mean, if somebody comes back to us in December and says, there's been a bit of a delay because, you know, there was problems with travel and there was a storm and it couldn't come through. What I'm going to say, no, don't extend it through to February. No, I'm going to be saying keep going. So I think that
I agree.
all of that is that if it's not uplifted, if it's not invested in this process by the end of June 2024, it's not available. If you need more than that, then you need to come.
So I think, do you want a third one there, that there is some reporting back, some timely reporting back? We need to have a report back on the 13th of December.
No, well, I go with
just as an update.
We need a report with something to report.
I think we need to be kept informed. And I think just a simple report, we're hearing back, we're working with them.
Absolutely.
Or it's not a thing.
That's a given.
Okay.
So, and for the
What it'll
project
be, I don't
manager,
know, but it's a given
for
that
the
there was
project
something.
manager to provide an update
By the end
on 13th of December, at the last meeting for the year. December, because it might be.
So no or maybe, you don't know.
It's a given.
Okay, so you're happy with that?
No, not at all. I don't want the end of June 2024. My motion will be the end of December 2023. I believe this will expand before the time.
Yep.
So can we?
Do we have a seconder for Peter's motion for December? No, there is no seconder.
Lapse then.
Yeah, that one's there. So another motion, James is moving, that it's to the end of June 2024. Are you happy with number 3, that there is an update provided, so we do get an update as a council?
I trust Graham, but sure, if we need that to feel okay with that.
Sorry, one point of clarification on that. We now have a budget there, or a tighter budget, but would we not, council ask the government to progress the investor, that would, rather than project manager?
Yeah, I don't think it matters whether it's the project manager or the governance group, so
But
long as you guys do it within your 40,000.
And it's our decision on the governance group, folks. We can't defer that to Graham.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
what
our
I'm saying.
decision. So is it the governance group?
That's what I'm saying.
Work together with the
That's
project
my
manager.
clarification.
$40,000.
I would put the governance group in there.
I would, because we've got a budget on.
And they know the budget and they have to cut their cost for that.
Yeah.
Happy to second that, Andrew.
And you're seconding that,
Yep.
Kevin, but are we just putting governance group?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's exactly our relationship.
Yeah.
That's it. And you guys can determine what,
And then the project.
Okay, so we've moved James, seconded Kevin. Any further discussion?
Can somebody explain to me why it's gone to June 2024?
It's the end of the financial year, isn't it? So the next LTP will reflect what's going on forward.
And just my other question is are we paying will that pay them on the current arrangement for the governance group? Because they're on a retainer, and so do we need a direct staff to?
As to the current arrangement.
Yeah. They run out.
I mean, well, you haven't said explicitly excluded it, so the assumption is we continue to fund them on the basis of the current arrangement.
Up to
$40,000.
Yeah. Would it be appropriate to say that we recast the budget to reflect that? Because we may need to just look at the whole governance and project management costs going forward to,
No,
Can we
we
leave that for
draft
staff to look at?
Yeah,
Yes, I just think
I think
It
that's.
sounds like it.
are you still happy with how it stands?
Yeah, I'm happy with how that stands. So I mean, I guess I don't know the details of how I can't recall the details of how the governance group works. So I guess it's just, I don't know how long that'll take you to, I don't know how far that'll take that. That's all.
So I don't think we need to have that in this motion.
No.
Okay, so we've got moved, James, second and Kevin, those 3 points above. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Against. Got that recorded?
Yes, please.
Cool. Right, we'll move now to is there a desire to then move into that next part of the agenda, which was the next steps? We're deferring those decisions.
I'd like to defer it,
Move Jane, second Bruce, that we defer the decisions on 7.9
Yes.
until we have further information.
Can I just have my vote against number 2 recorded? Just number 2.
Just number 2?
Yep.
Sure,
Thank you.
not a problem. Thank you. I know it's been it's something we all had to sit around and really, really thrash out. It's not an easy decision. And we thank the members of the community being with us today, listening in on this, observing how we've got through this. And thank you, Norm, and
Thank you.
so with that, I will now declare the meeting closed. We will break for lunch.